Venturing out to sea towards a pod of dolphins can hold unexpected dangers despite the allure of these magnificent creatures. While dolphins are generally perceived as friendly and intelligent beings, they possess wild instincts, potentially leading to aggressive behavior. Moreover, misidentifying a dolphin's fin for that of a shark can result in a deadly situation for swimmers. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. In today's episode, we go over 3 times swimming with dolphins resulted in a human fatality. Welcome to Final Affliction. On the southeast coast of Brazil lies São Sebastião, a city famed for its golden sandy beaches. Locals and tourists flock to the warm, glistening seas. One day, while swimmers were splashing in the sea, a bottlenose dolphin made its way to the shallows. Its dorsal fin was spotted some way away, making a beeline for some female swimmers. It popped its head up next to a group of girls. They jumped in fright as the dolphin had taken them by surprise. But upon realizing that it was a friendly animal, they squealed in delight. Each of them took turns to hold their hands out and stroke the dolphin on its rounded head as it circled the group. Its smooth, wet skin shimmered in the sunshine. Its mouth was circled up into the dolphin's characteristic grin. He was a lone male and appeared friendly enough. Perhaps he was seeking comfort in the hundreds of humans that bathed in the sea each day. Perhaps he was lost and disoriented by the loud noises, children's shouts and screams, the roaring motorboat engines, or perhaps he was merely curious. Whatever the reason, this gentle mammal was soon to be known as the killer dolphin. Soon his playful manner would be taken advantage of, and his gentle nature would make a sudden and unexpected switch. The girls continued playing near the dolphin for the rest of the afternoon. But when the day turned to night, they left. The crowds subsided and the seas became quiet. The dolphin was left alone. The following morning, as bathers returned to the warm waters once more, the dolphin reappeared. He would splash about in the water, blowing moist air through his blowhole, diving beneath the surface and leaping up and out of the waves. As word spread that there was a friendly dolphin near the beach, more and more people wanted to witness it. They wanted to experience the closeness of nature and the chance to get up close and personal to one of nature's most intelligent animals. Swarms of people splashed into the sea. They scrambled for a rare photo opportunity or the chance to stroke him. The locals affectionately named the dolphin Tio. Initially, the dolphin visited the ferry pier. He would inquisitively pop his head up to see the crowds boarding the ferries. Each day, he followed the boats out of the harbor, jumping behind them in their wakes or diving in front of their bows. After several months occupying the waters near the pier, the dolphin headed a few miles north, and that is where he found the beaches, packed with people enjoying the sunshine and the sea. At times, there were up to 30 people flocking around him, splashing about and prodding and poking him. People grabbed Tio's dorsal fin, willing him to give them a ride through the water. Others grabbed onto his pectoral fins, restraining the animal and causing him to panic. Each time, the dolphin struggled to get away. He was strong and powerful, but with so many people grabbing him, he became wary and anxious. It was only a matter of time before Tio would react. But still, the dolphin came back for more. He was teased and tormented. He was bullied and abused. People took advantage of his gentle nature. Some people placed an ice cream over Tio's blowhole, screaming in delight when he exhaled, sending the ice cream soaring into the air. Others attempted to pour beer into the dolphin's mouth. What had begun as a rare opportunity to see such a graceful marine mammal had turned into a circus ground. Eventually and understandably, Tio snapped. In November 1994, he began to resist the torment. He fought back. Bottlenose dolphins can grow up to 13 feet or 4 meters long. They can weigh over 650 pounds or 300 kilograms. They have between 80 and 100 sharp teeth, which are used for grabbing their prey. They can swim at speeds of up to 20 miles per hour, and they are most famous for their intelligence. There is a huge amount of research demonstrating the intelligence of dolphins, from tool use, behavioral mimicry, and language comprehension to inter- and intra-species cooperative hunting. They are in tune with their surroundings and understand a great deal. There are regular reports of dolphins biting people both in captivity and in the wild. They can drag people underwater and crash into them, causing serious, if not fatal, damage. People have had their backs and ribs broken from dolphins plowing aggressively into them with their snouts. In November 1994, as tourists and locals alike were enjoying their time with Tio, they began to take advantage of him again. This time, he lashed out, splashing his tail aggressively and knocking into the swimmers at tremendous speeds. People began screaming, splashing around in the water as they desperately tried to get away from him and make it to shore. People on the beaches rushed into the water to help drag the injured people to safety. The attack only lasted a couple of minutes, but 28 people were injured in the water that day. Most of the swimmers were taken to hospital and treated for deep bruising and cracked ribs. This earned the dolphin the nickname of Killer Dolphin, a name that Tio was about to live up to. You would have thought that people would have learnt their lessons after Tio's outburst. To some, it was obvious that he was being pestered far too much, pushing him to act out aggressively. The dolphin had tolerated so much, and now he had enough. People also suspected that he was acting territorially, as he preferred to swim closely with women, often chasing away men. One December afternoon, two friends, Joao Paulo Moreira and Wilson Reyes Pedroso, entered the water. They had been drinking alcohol and swam out to join some women just off the shore. Tio had been playful with the two women, who were delighted with his company. However, Joao and Wilson were rough and disrespectful to Tio. They messed about, likely trying to impress the women with their antics. Joao tried to put his cigarette into Tio's blowhole. Tio thrashed around. He rammed the two men, repeatedly crashing into them with his snout. The men shouted out. Each time the dolphins smashed into them and they were thrown through the water. The two women swam for the shore, leaving the men fighting for their lives. Onlookers swam out to the distressed men. Wilson gasped for air, clutching his ribs in the chest-high water. He was in pain. The sheer force of the dolphin's blows had cracked his ribs. He was lucky not to drown. He was lucky to be alive. His teasing and tormenting of a wild animal had served him right. Joao was less lucky. As he lay, floating on the surface of the ocean, unable to move, onlookers swam out to rescue him. The repeated blows from the dolphin had knocked him so hard that not only had his ribcage been crushed, expelling all air from his lungs, but he was bleeding internally. He was dragged ashore by the people who rescued him and taken straight to the hospital. He died a short while later of his injuries. The coroner stated he had received a massive internal hemorrhage. At the time, this was the only reported human fatality caused by a wild dolphin. The local authority feared that there might be a backlash against all dolphins following Joao's death. A few months later, in the summer of 1995, Tio disappeared. Some believe that he left the shorelines and joined a passing pod of dolphins, returning to the wild habitat in which he belonged. Some, however, believe Tio had a different fate. Some believe that locals may have killed him in an act of revenge for the death of their friends. No one really knows what happened to him. Although encounters with nature are a truly wonderful thing, we must respect the animals on this planet and the habitats in which they live. It was humans that pushed this gentle giant to become a killer dolphin, causing Joao to meet his untimely, final affliction.
This Wednesday marked the third day of their vacation in the Bahamas. Like many tourists, they had always dreamed of visiting the island country. Unlike most places in the world, the Bahamas wasn't falsely represented by the media and movies. It was, if not more, as stunning and exciting as they said. Jordan and her family woke up to the sunrise, eager to start the day. After all, this was only their third day and they had so many things to do. Jordan had breakfast with her family and shared stories with them as they sat together at the table. It was a fun time surrounded by the beautiful sandy beaches in the Bahamas and accompanied by her family and her girlfriend. What more could a 21-year-old girl from Torrance, California ask for? Back home, Jordan was studying communications at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. Her girlfriend Gianna was also studying communications. At around 12 p.m., the family had just finished their activities and were about to end the day relaxing and enjoying the scenery. However, that would soon change. Spotting the Sandy Toes Tour Company, the family decided to take a last-minute day trip to Rose Island. The 6-hour excursion involved a boat cruise, a snorkeling experience, and a private beach where you could pet swimming pigs. Jordan was ecstatic about the idea. She had always been an admirer of nature and deeply loved animals. Snorkeling and petting pigs in the Bahamas was music to her ears. Although the trip was already full for the day, Michael, Jordan's father, managed to convince the company to have them on board for the excursion. The company snuck them on. Excited at the deal, the family headed towards Paradise Island Ferry Terminal, ready to board the ferry that would take them to Rose Island. It was a tragic mistake. As the energetic family boarded the ferry, they beamed their smiles at each other, unaware of what was about to happen. Nobody could have predicted that this small day trip would change their lives forever. The small ferry was docked, floating atop the rich turquoise waters beneath it. Although it was in the middle of summer, the sun decided to hide effectively today, behind the gray clouds looming over the ocean. Still, the waters were just as beautiful with the dimmer sunshine it was working with. Eventually, the family followed the guide to prepare for their snorkeling excursion. However, Michael, the two brothers, Jordan's sister, and Gianna did not want to go through with the snorkeling. They just wanted to spend the rest of the afternoon lightly swimming by the beachside, enjoying the scenic views of the ocean. Jordan and Cammie, on the other hand, wanted the full experience. It was the third day of their trip, after all, and Jordan wanted to make the most of it. The family talked it over and decided they would just part for a while. Later, Jordan and Cammie would rendezvous with Michael and the rest by the beachside. Since the distance to the other side where the snorkeling spot was not so far, separating from one another seemed like a good idea at the time. However, it was a decision that everyone would later regret. As the two groups parted ways, Michael kissed Jordan on the forehead and told her, "I'll see you later, Jordan." Jordan waved her hand as she walked with Cammie towards the other part of the beach. The rest of the members left by the beachside waved her goodbye. Unbeknownst to them, this would be the last time they would see Jordan alive. Jordan and Cammie walked up to the guide and followed the trail. The snorkeling spot was not too far, but walking towards it was a great time for reflection. Along the way, there were green vegetation and exotic birds such as peacocks in the area. The trail was sparsely placed with benches, locker rooms, and bathrooms for the tourists. The narrow trail was surrounded by all kinds of trees growing through the sandy soil. Cammie and Jordan spoke about life, her school, and her family as they calmly walked alongside the other tourists. The bright 21-year-old had many aspirations and a great future ahead of her. Eventually, they reached the snorkeling spot. Donning their wetsuits, Jordan and Cammie prepared for the fun experience. Jordan was particularly excited to see the underwater critters meandering around in the area. It was time to go. Jordan headed towards the deeper parts of the water, admiring nature through her goggles. It was great timing as the sunlight began to show itself again, illuminating the beautiful structures of coral reefs under the water. Cammie had also gotten in the water and was thoroughly enjoying her underwater exploration. However, as the two enjoyed their experience, death reared its ugly head. As Jordan continued looking through the water, Cammie broke through the surface. Suddenly, she heard Jordan yell, "Mom!" She turned her head and saw something strange. At first, she thought it was a school of dolphins surrounding Jordan, and that Jordan wanted to show it to her. However, as she looked more intently, an ominous feeling enveloped her. It was a feeling no mother ever wanted to feel. A school of sharks had approached Jordan out of nowhere. Immediately, Cammie's motherly instincts kicked in. She shouted at Jordan from a distance, telling her to swim towards her. However, it was futile. Without warning, the school of sharks pounced on her, biting her everywhere. Jordan fought hard, but there was already blood in the water, and the sharks had become frenzied. Jordan let loose blood-curdling screams, prompting Cammy to approach her. She screamed at Jordan once more, asking her to swim towards her. However, Jordan could not swim anymore. Cammy noticed her right arm had been bitten off by the shark. Horrified at the sight, Cammy immediately sprang into action, swimming towards Jordan despite the risk of getting attacked herself. Naturally, she was fearful of swimming into the chaos, but she didn't care. The fear of losing her child overtook any instinct to run and call for help. It was simply something any loving mother would have done. Cammy reached Jordan and fought off the sharks, punching the beasts in the nose and hitting them with everything she had. As she pulled on Jordan, the young girl told Cammy, "Mom, there's another shark coming." The shark sped towards them like a freight train. It bit off another chunk of her lower leg. Jordan was bleeding profusely. Cammy never gave up. She hauled Jordan toward a nearby rock and called for help. Eventually, a boat from the Sandy Toes snorkeling tour rushed to her aid. Michael and the other family members were petting pigs by the beachside when they heard of a teenager attacked by sharks in the snorkeling area. After waiting a few minutes, Jordan was taken by an ambulance to a hospital in Nassau. However, upon arrival, she was pronounced dead. When Michael and the rest arrived at the hospital, they were too late. Jordan had succumbed to her injuries. In the subsequent months following her death, the family criticized the company for not having any protocols when it came to shark attacks. When the incident happened, not one staff or a boat was present to whisk away the sharks. Additionally, when Jordan was bleeding on a nearby island, barely clinging to life, the boat that would take her to the hospital arrived with no medical supplies. According to Michael, they did not even have first aid. The Lindseys called for better responses in the future to avoid the terrible fate their daughter experienced. Sadly, according to Michael, in his most recent interviews, Cammy is still too traumatized from the incident, especially because she was present and she witnessed firsthand her daughter resting in her arms while slowly succumbing to her final affliction.
Australia is probably most well known as the land that is always trying to kill you. And with the amount of dangerous animals that live there, it's not hard to see why. Even something as cute looking as a kangaroo could do you some serious harm if you get too close to it. And one of the country's deadliest animals that most people try to stay well away from are sharks. Surrounded by tropical and typically warm seas, Australia is the perfect place for all sorts of marine life to thrive. The warm waters ensure that there is plenty of food for all manners of animals, including sharks. Whilst great whites are the creatures that are often talked about off of the Australia coast, that is not the species that features in this story. Instead, the type of shark which caught people's attention in early February 2023 was actually a bull shark. Whilst films like Jaws might have put people off of great white sharks, many experts believe that bull sharks are actually the most dangerous sharks in the world. This is because they're an aggressive species of shark, preying on almost anything they believe they can eat, such as fish, dolphins, and sea turtles. They will even hunt other species of shark if it is smaller than them. But what makes them truly dangerous is the fact that they tend to hunt in waters where people often swim, namely along tropical shorelines. One of the most amazing things about bull sharks, though, is the fact that they have developed special adaptations in the way that their kidneys function, along with special glands near their tails, which help them keep salt in their bodies. This means that whilst other sharks need to stay in salt water in order to survive, bull sharks can actually swim into freshwater rivers, where they often give birth to their young. They do this as there are fewer predators in the rivers, which gives the baby sharks a better chance of survival. However, it also means that rivers can be incredibly dangerous places for people, especially if they're swimming in them, something that 16-year-old Stella discovered the hard way in early 2023. Due to where Australia is located in the world, being close to the equator, it can get incredibly hot during their summer months. Because of this, most people typically head to the closest body of water possible to try and cool off from the intense heat of the day. Stella Berry and her friends were simply one of these groups of people looking for a bit of fun and for a nice, cool place to relax and swim. The teenagers, who all lived in or around North Fremantle, decided that they would head to a local river called the Swan River. Located near Perth, Swan River ends up leading out into the ocean along Australia's west coast, nearby to South Beach. The group of teenagers thought that the river would be less busy than the beach and a bit more sheltered from waves and dangerous sea creatures. Being only 16, the group of friends were simply enjoying their time together and making memories that would hopefully last them the rest of their lives. Whilst the group were most certainly not the only people to have had the idea to spend the day at the river, it wasn't overcrowded, which meant that they were able to swim and relax, relatively unbothered. After spending a bit of time swimming in the refreshing river, Stella and her friends then began sunbathing. The day was simply perfect. At around 2:30 in the afternoon, whilst Stella was resting on the edge of the river, she suddenly spotted a flash of gray in the water. After a few more seconds, the young girl realized what she had just seen. A pod of dolphins were swimming up the river, most likely heading back out to the ocean. Wanting to get a better look at the amazing animals, Stella decided to jump into the river and swim a bit closer. This in itself is a very dangerous thing to do, as whilst dolphins might seem like kind and loving animals, they can actually harm people severely, especially when they are startled or made to feel like they are in danger. Only moments after getting into the river and starting to make her way over to the dolphins, Stella felt a sharp and excruciating painful tug on her leg. Something had grabbed her. The young girl, frantic and in pain, began thrashing about to try and get herself free from whatever it was that had grabbed a hold of her leg. Unfortunately, all of her panicking only seemed to enrage the animal more. It was at this point that she knew that the only thing that could attack her like that was a shark. Terrified and trying to fight for her life, Stella yelled and called out. However, she was simply no match for the hungry predator. The young girl's friends could do nothing but watch from the side of the river, calling out for help and trying to encourage Stella to fight back and get away from the shark. All of the commotion caught the attention of a man nearby who, after realizing what was going on, quickly jumped into the water to try and help Stella escape. After making his way over to the young girl, the man, who did not want to be named, managed to get her away from the shark, who had seemingly disappeared for a moment. Seeing as this was his chance to save her, the man quickly dragged Stella back to the shore of the riverbank. The entire time that he did this, the young teenager was entirely unconscious. Whether this was from the shock of what had just happened to her or the fact that her wound had caused her to pass out, it was difficult to tell. Whilst this was happening, emergency services, including police boats, rushed to the scene near the Fremantle traffic bridge. Luckily, someone had the forethought to contact them, as they knew that Stella would be needing medical attention as quickly as possible. Once Stella and her rescuer were safely back on land, the teenager was quickly attended to by paramedics who heroically tried to save her life. Unfortunately, the injuries to her leg were simply too substantial, and she sadly passed away. After the tragic incident, authorities put out a warning online to dissuade others from swimming in the river whilst they searched for the shark which had attacked the young girl. They did not want another incident to occur and for someone else to end up with the same tragic fate. Eventually, roughly a day later, a 2.5-meter bull shark was caught about 1 kilometer from where Stella was attacked. A local fisherman had said that bait was used to lure the animal into the area they were fishing in. However, what shocked them was the fact that the shark did not come from the ocean, but from further up the river. Once the animal was captured, it was relocated to the ocean, quite a distance away from the river, so that it would hopefully not return to the popular swimming place again. While some people might think that it would have been better off to euthanize the shark as it had attacked a human, advocates for the species believed that it was better to relocate it, as it had simply been acting on its instincts and likely thought Stella was one of the dolphins that had been swimming by. However, Because she was separate from the pod, she was an easier target for the shark, who took the opportunity to try and get what it likely thought was an easy meal. Despite the circumstances for why the attack happened, people in the area were shocked and saddened by the tragedy that occurred. It was the first fatality in the Swan River by a shark attack in over a century. All of Stella's friends and her school held a vigil for the young girl who had been a well-liked person and who was often regarded highly by those who knew her. Many of her friends said how she was always kind to everyone and how she didn't have a bad word to say about anyone. She was also a talented athlete and keen hockey player, and she had hoped to live in Europe once she was old enough to travel. But whilst she might no longer be with us, Stella's friends and family will forever hold her memory in their hearts. And whilst officials did say that the chance of a shark attack happening in the river is incredibly rare, the chances are never zero in places where they are known to live. Not even the rivers are safe in Australia from meeting your terrifying final affliction.